Good morning. It's been a good program so far, and I think we'll just continue with that trend. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce not only our keynote speaker today, but a colleague of mine and somebody I consider a friend and known for a long, long time now, Lee Alexander. Lee is Director of Fiber Supply for International Paper. He's responsible for overall strategy and leadership for IP's fiber supply organization. That includes managing a $3 billion spend annually to source more than 65 million tons of wood fiber and 5 million tons of recovered fiber to our 24 paper mills and pulp mills in the U.S., 5 of which are located in Georgia. Lee also provides oversight for our global fiber supply organization around the world. Lee has roots in Georgia. He grew up in the Cordell-Leesburg area. He attended Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and he's a Bulldog. He attended the University of Georgia, where he got a bachelor's degree in forest resources in 1985. He's a 30-year veteran of our industry, has held numerous operations, technical, and leadership positions during his career, and has worked and lived across the South. Lee currently lives on a horse farm in Fayette County, Tennessee, and still enjoys working, living, and playing outdoors. So if you join me in welcoming and giving Lee a warm GFA round of applause. Thanks.
I am happy to be in Georgia. As Gary said, I was born and raised in Georgia, had a 30-year career in this really cool industry. Surprisingly, it's the first time I have ever been to the Georgia Forestry Association's annual meeting, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come home. Look forward to hanging out with you for the next day or so. So I was asked to provide a perspective on the future of pulp and paper, and I'm going to try and do that. I'm happy to do that. I will. As I was preparing for this, I was sort of reminded of the statement. It's been attributed to a lot of different people: Mark Twain, Shaw, a few others. I don't know who said it, but it was sort of, I would have written a shorter letter if I'd had more time. As I began to sort of try and prepare, what did I want to sort of share with you over a 30-minute period or something, it was amazing how much information, and to try and sort of whittle that down to something that hopefully would be salient to you and helpful to the discussion as we sort of think about the future, it was more difficult than I thought. So hopefully what I've prepared for you is on target. What I will encourage, and I think we're going to try and leave this so we have a few minutes for questions at the end, and I really, really hope I get some, mainly because a big benefit to me, and I would even say to International Paper, for coming to something like this, is to get your perspectives. We know our perspectives, and I can tell you they're probably not all right. In fact, I know they're not all right. I only have to sort of live around myself for a week or so to find a mistake or two that I've made. And so you'll see some things up here. If you've got a different perspective, I'd love to hear about it. If there's things that you hear that have challenged your thinking a little bit, or that you wonder, I'd like to talk about that. So I'll give you a little bit of homework as we get started. Pay attention, and if you've got things to talk about, I hope we have a few minutes at the end to do that. You know, the future. I watched a video just, I bet a number of you have seen it. It's 2 or 3 or 4 years old by now, and it's talking about the world in 2028. Anybody have seen that? It's a YouTube video. I encourage, just search for it. I almost shared it with you, but honestly, that's 4 years old, and we already have, you know, the things we were talking about in 2028. Some of those things are happening faster, some of them are happening slower, but for sure, the speed of change, I think, in the world has never been faster, mostly due to the technology that exists that's around us. Cycle times for almost anything are faster than they've ever been before, which I think means we have to be on our toes a little bit more than we typically have been in trying to sort of predict the future. There was a guy who was actually in our company several years ago Mike Macedo, Gary Capes, I bet you guys will remember some of this. He said, I think in this business we need to be able to take speculation completely out of the wood procurement business. I only know one way to do that, and that's really not healthy if you're standing where I am. That is to put so much of a price premium in there that you can't be wrong. Everybody in here, we get paid. Frankly, our businesses depend on us predicting the future a little bit and doing it better than the next guy or as good as the next guy. Point is, we need to be able to get it right enough of the time for our businesses to grow and be healthy. So what you saw kind of at the beginning of the that little bit of a video that I shared with you is something we've been thinking about recently. So we've been around since 1898, be 120 years old next year. I like to say that because it makes me sound young. After 30 years in the industry, I guess I could say that I'm not young anymore, but compared to IP, I am. But we want to be around another 120 years. We started, some of you know this, International Paper started when 17 very small pulp and paper companies, timberland companies, got together up in the Northeast and decided to call themselves International Paper. The reason we call ourselves International Paper is those founders way back when thought one day we might expand into Canada. Well, on the recent pulp acquisition of Weyerhaeuser's Fluff Bolt, we're now in Canada again. We've been out of Canada for a while, but we've got a mill in Grand Prairie, so I guess those guys were right. But we've been, you saw in the video talking about the IP way, doing the right things for the right reasons all of the time. We've said that for a long time, but we really began to think about what does that really mean? What does that really mean when the things that are sort of around the circle that you see up there, what does that mean related to sort of making the planet a better place to live? What does that mean about people? What does it mean about our performance, innovation? What you notice right there in the middle, what's it mean about sustaining forests? I think one of the things that we recognize, and I think most of you know, we sold all of our timberlands back in 2006, which was an incredibly tough decision for International Paper to make, having been a timberland owner for over 100 years. But we made that decision, but we acknowledge that we are as dependent on sustainable forests and sustainable forestry as we've ever been. I guess you could say maybe more so than we've ever been. And we don't have any intention of sort of dodging that. And that's part of the reason that I'm here and that we're here. You can see some of the things that we've been doing recently. I'll call out one of those. When our former CEO retired, just before he retired about 3 years ago, John Faraci, one of the things that he did was work with NIFWIF to develop a program that we could help support, partially financially, but more than financially, and it was in areas that we could kind of help things like longleaf establishment, things like streamside management zone protection, corridor development. Frankly, things that don't necessarily translate into bringing more wood to an IP facility, but do help ensure that we have sustainable forests for generations to come. We did that 5 years ago. It's been incredibly successful. We spent about $7.5 million, but there was matching funds through a lot of different channels on there to get that up over $20 million in funding, and been incredibly successful. We just had, I guess it was earlier this year, we sat down with them and renewed that for another 5 years, and we're going to throw another $10 million in the pack, and that should develop another $30 million plus to kind of continue our effort around there. Those are, I guess, the kind of things that I'm proud that we're doing and hope that we can continue to do. I'm going to back up for just a minute on one of these slides, and I want to talk about this investing in people as it relates to thinking about the future a little bit differently, because I think when I look at International Paper, and this may sound a little bit off target to you when I talk about the future of pulp and paper, but I don't believe it is. Maybe the biggest thing that we're thinking about differently today is safety. And I don't mean just the safety of our employees that are working in mills, our employees that are working in the woods, of everybody that has an affiliation with us. I believe, that we can have and should be striving for totally injury-free workplaces. Suppliers that are visiting our facilities, truck drivers that are delivering recovered fiber or wood to our facilities, contractors who are working at our mills or at our wood yards. Just as though I think if you were to invite me into your house, you would want to make sure that I didn't get hurt while I was there, and that frankly I enjoyed myself while I was there. That's our vision of how we think about it. It's no different that, I won't feel any less worse, I know that's bad English, if a truck driver who's delivering a load of wood to our facility gets hurt than if Gary Capes gets hurt. And frankly, just beginning to think about that differently is at first thought, so how can that be? It's one of the more dangerous, we've heard that all of our careers. It's one of the more dangerous businesses in the world. It certainly doesn't have to be, and I think you all have proven that it isn't anymore. So I hope that two things. One, we will really kind of take hold of that and take it to a level that we've never really seen, so that 10 years from now, we truly are talked about as one of the safest industries in the world. And that everybody we know, frankly, has made it home safe every night. So you would be probably surprised at how much time we spent at every level of the organization thinking about how to become better at that. And I know we haven't gotten it exactly right yet, and that's another one of those areas that those of you who work with us encourage you to kind of help us get better in that respect. I don't need you to see everything that's on here. What really the timeline is we really have changed a lot over the, so we're 120 years old, but the last decade has been incredibly impactful for International Paper, starting with our decision to sell the timberlands back in 2006. The vision of our senior lead team, John Faraci in particular at that time, was the world's becoming so competitive that we need to be, rather than a bit of a master, a jack of all trades and a master of none, we need to find 2 or 3 businesses that we think we either we have the right assets, the right people, the right core competencies to be among the very best in the world. So we made some very key strategic decisions back then. We sold our timberlands. We sold our sawmills. We sold some of our paper mills and grades, and we decided at that point to stay focused on a few. So what I want to do is describe a little bit about what we've done and where we've come and where we think we're going, and hopefully I'll give you a little bit of a flavor for our view of where pulp and paper is going. So this is just a look of where we are today. We're still very much a U.S.-based bench, if you will, and we've been expanding across the world for quite a while now. I think if you look at us in 10 years, we're still going to have most of our bread buttered in the U.S., and that's partly because of the businesses that we've chosen to be in and the forests that grow to support those businesses.